kind of facilitating this event, not speaking. So I'll keep my stand.
Sure. Yeah, ma'am.
And
Sorry.
yeah, and Amitabh is the person who would have much experience working in this area, and he'll share his expertise and experience. But I'm just checking out. I see some of you um, not having Bengali surnames, and I'm just wondering if you understand Bangla, or should we just continue in English?
So it will be in English. So that's what I was told yesterday
Okay,
by
all
Shongit.
right, yeah. Okay.
Yeah. So it is a more pluricultural gathering. So Shongit requested me to make it in English. So that's it.
Sure, absolutely. Okay. So I think without further ado, what I'll do is I'll just hand over to Amitabh so that we can have more time later on to discuss. Of course, it's becoming very imminent and difficult for most of us to understand what's happening. But we hope to gather some experience from Amitabh, and then we can brainstorm maybe a little bit on our understanding and anything we want to unfold further. Okay, so Amitabh, over to you.
Thank you, Papyadi. Thank you so much. Thanks to Aniruddha, Shongit, Shushabanda, all actually for contacting me prior to, I think, two weeks ago, and talking about, and thinking of to make this a reality. This is actually my current research, and I am grateful to see also my teacher, Professor Ritupriya, is also on the platform, I can see, and some of my seniors from JNU also. So this gives probably more responsibility. Okay, so I'm sharing my screen. Yeah. Is it visible now?
Yeah, very much.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. Thank you. So today's topic is on global constitutionalism and the pandemic agreement. So the pandemic treaty, as we know that it is currently making a round of conversation going on for probably for the last 2 years, and which is now almost about to so-called close, because we are approaching towards the World Health Assembly. So every year there is a World Health Assembly in Geneva. So their countries are expected to approve it as well as ratify, and then it will be implemented. So the point is that when I was requested to give a talk on this, so then I was thinking that how to make it relevant. Then Shushabanda and some other actually they suggested that you frame it in such a way so that it should be relevant in the country context, as well as even at the provincial and grassroots level, people can understand or relate it. I would rather say relate it. So so this is, I am not getting into much of technicalities. Rather, I am giving a broad overview that how this kind of international agreement or pact relates to our daily life, or have make some impact at the country as well as grassroots level. So that's why I thought to bring in this global constitutionalism, which is actually a part of some of a background research for this treaty. But I thought that this we need to understand to make it relatable. And then I would come to the pandemic agreement. Now, today's talk is framed in broadly in two parts. One is that what is global constitutionalism, how its trajectories, and how the pandemic treaty or other multilateral agreements are embedded in this entire view of global constitutionalism. And the second part is that actually the pandemic treaty or the pandemic agreement, what is the role of pandemic agreement in safeguarding the interest of public health over trade and commerce. So this are the broadly the two part of the talk. So also, if you need to interrupt, please feel free. I shall be happy to clarify in between also, and of course we will have a round of conversation at the end of the talk. So there are, while we talk about this pandemic treaty, so let me just bit of rephrase it. Right now it is being called as pandemic agreement and not pandemic treaty. So there are different terminological differences, and of course that makes a lot of functional differences also in international legal courses and context. So treaty, it is not being called as such. As we see, it is still so it is called an agreement. And there is and what we hunch is it will be actually going to be a framework of convention. So earlier WHO, World Health Organization, that had a framework of convention on tobacco. So framework of convention is like that there is an overarching framework, and countries, those who accede or accept to that particular to any such framework, they are supposed to implement the broader guidelines of those framework. Treaty is actually where there are very specific clauses which countries need to adhere to. Say there are World Trade Organization, there are treaties of WTO, World Trade Organizations, WIPO, World Intellectual Property Organizations. So in those contexts, treaties are becoming very relevant because they come with special clauses and very specific actions. Agreement is another form of this international collaboration, which is also that parties or the member states, meaning the countries, they are agreed to accept certain framework, certain clauses, as well as such as certain suggestive guidelines. So that's right. So presently it is again the negotiation is still going on. So what happens while any treaty or agreement or any form of this international pact happens? So there are rounds of discussion. Mostly these are held in Geneva because of international UN capital. And so that's what from 2022 onwards it is going on. So we are here actually to discuss about the constitutional quality. What is the constitutional quality in the pandemic treaty? That we first needs to understand, because ultimately the pandemic agreement or pandemic treaty or the framework of convention, whatever it may be in the end, so it will be it is going to form some constitutive mechanisms. So that we need to then understand. Now all these agreements, they come under the overall umbrella of global constitutionalism. Global constitutionalism came up mostly after the Second World War, and before that also there was existence of in some form or other about like international gathering, international collaboration of governance management. So in the contemporary context, UN was formed based on these three principles: human rights, democracy, and rule of law. And that became the foundation for the global constitutionalism. And that's the constitutional quality in any. So even if I believe that there are some participants in discussion from the International Debt Tribunal, committee. So even say for any debt relievers or debt waivers also. So all this pact and environment pact, pact on the biodiversity, all these pacts are actually governed by this global constitutionalism. And these three edifices are very common: human rights, democracy, and rule of law. So what happened 1970 onwards, 60s, late 60s or 70s onwards, there was a different criteria came up in this trinity of the globalization of the constitution, of the constitutional understanding. So then the progressive development or development became a criteria. So development became a criteria where UN, this global constitutionalism conceived that it is no more that we need to make international laws or international standards based on the principle of human rights, democracy, and rule of law, but we also need to adhere to the overall objectives of development. Development means I am here, it's mostly about the economic development. Now there is a very celebrated discussion thesis of Polanyi of this development paradigm. So mostly in the global context, this paradigm is based on the three constitutive processes of natural resource, human resource, and fiscal resource. So there, what happens, the moment development paradigm came into the context, late 60s and 70s onwards, so economic institutionalization of these three major areas or categories of resource started happening, and that became the cornerstone of development paradigm. So if we understand, I mean, if we think in the backdrop of our own context, say there are certain structures, how the natural resource can be extracted or can be used uh, for overall, I mean, I am not saying that from the climate or all, but for overall development perspective. Similarly, human resource as well as the fiscal resource. So these three became the became the major pillars of this development paradigm, and every constitution, every treaty or international pact then onwards, more or less, they had to adhere to this three constitutive processes. So what happened? Now 70s, mostly late 70s onwards, this reordering, there was a reordering of global constitutionalism started. Now, which was earlier the primary quality of global constitutionalism, meaning that global trinity, human resource, rule of law, and democracy, they became the secondary constitutionalism. And progressive development, the development paradigm, became the primary constitutionalism. So the hypothesis came up that there is a top-down model of development establishes a constituent power at the bottom to facilitate the process of the laws of secondary constitution, the objectives of secondary constitutionalism, meaning democracy, human rights, and democracy, human rights, and uh, rule of law. So this became the new hypothesis, and from 80s onwards, more or less, this hypothetical, I mean, there are certain debates. Again, these are the debates and discussions of global constitutionalism, which may not be primarily my field, but anyway, so these are the, when we need to engage in such topics, so we need to go for cross learning and disciplinary understanding. So there is a hypothetical construction of this particular mode of constitutionalism, which is happening at the or constitution without any social contract. The main point is that, so it is a overall understanding of the current global constitutionalism, that progressive development can pave the path for these three valued objectives, which is democracy, human rights, and rule of law. I think I am clear, because this is very essential to understand the pandemic agreement also. So this is the overall structure of global constitutionalism. Now, what happened? This constitutionalism from 85, 90s onwards, it became the, core structure of global constitutionalism, which sometime or most of the time scholars refer to as global economic constitutionalism or economic constitutionalism. So GATT, World Trade Organizations, FTAs means foreign trade agreements, then IFIs means international financing institutes. In the European Union context, it's Troika, World Bank and IMF, international dispute settlement. So all these global level structures came up in the past 30 years to facilitate this process of primarily progressive development. Secondarily, through progressive development, this process of constitutionalism underpins that through progressive developmentalism, we will achieve human rights, rule of law, and democracy at the country level. So when whatever the pact internationally is being made, this is a theoretical premise. Now, 90s onwards, more or less all the treaties, there are UN level more than 3,000 in various spheres of the society and economy. So all this actually somehow they are addressing this, and they are impacted, influenced, as well as governed, guided by this economic global constitutionalism. So the pandemic treaty or pandemic agreement is also happening in this under this broad structure of present constitutionalism. The problem is that, see, this is how the problem, that when there is a set pattern of this constitutionalism is unable to address the global crisis, mostly the global crisis, it can be divided, or it's not actually a it can be there are like 4 types mostly, broadly. One is the redistribution, geopolitical, ecological, and refugee and migrant crisis. So at the global scale, we have been dealing with these 4 broadly, these 4 types of crisis, and they have now become global crisis, which are not possible to be addressed, to get addressed by this economic form of global constitutionalism. And that's the bone of contention. That's the primary understanding here, that every treaty, and this is actually not only especially not only flagged by the public health or so-called global health scholars, mostly engaged in global health laws, that global constitutionalism cannot address this. These are equally getting concentration as well as academic attention by scholars from other disciplines also, like in environment, biodiversity, even some trade scholars are also flagging it, that this constitutionalism, the current form of constitutionalism, is not able to address the global crisis. Because see, there is now actually international transfer of crisis, if we say in that way. So how to make that possible? I mean, how to address those concerns? So this is so there is an alternative form. I was not thinking to come to this slide, but I thought, okay, let's make it. So this there is a alternate current also against this current form of global constitutionalism, which is actually also a driver for the current pandemic agreement. So what is the alternative structure? So there is eco-social constitutionalism. Uh, Another is that legal globalization from below, uh, and contestatory constitutionalism. What they mean? So one is that eco-social constitutionalism, the constitutionalism which is actually valuing the eco-social contract in various communities, understanding the concerns of the indigenous community, understanding the perspectives of the local need and over trade and commerce, and then accordingly build the constitutionalism. There are various examples, but again, these are very small scale examples, not country-wide kind of examples. And that's what global scholars, I mean, governance scholars are using. Legal globalization from below means that there are some rule-based activities that need to be adhered to at the bottom, and that uh, becomes the base to govern ourselves, the societies, the countries at the country level as well as global level. So that's the legal globalization from below. And third is that contestatory constitutionalism. This means actually that there are handful number or blocks of academic scholars, activists, uh, as well as civil society members. They are very emotionally deeply engaged with the current form of global constitutionalism, and they are obvious, of course, posing an alternative and also dissenting ideas to this. So they have also, they are not necessarily out of this global economic constitutionalism, but their main agenda or point is that to make this current form of global constitutionalism is more fair and just. So scholars, they are saying that these three mode of constitutionalism can, sorry, can be integrated, and that integral constitutionalism should be the pathway in the future. uh, I just need to qualify the legal globalization another for one more time. Legal globalization, we can also think of the example by, like, say, HIV/AIDS. So how the HIV/AIDS crisis actually rattled the society across the country, not only in Africa, not only in Asia, but equally in the US. So how the civil society actors or even the government in many various places, they actually collected evidence of that non-availability of antiretroviral therapeutics, and also the crisis to access to HIV/AIDS therapeutics. And based on that, say, the law became there was a norm, there was a law. So municipality or the provincial level, then in fact it started in various places of the US provinces, then the country level, and finally it reached to the global consensus. So this and there are a lot of spontaneous movements happening across the globe. So that's what the scholars in this area, they are trying to theorize those spontaneity. They are capturing those spontaneity to form legal globalization, rule-based globalization from below, not from the top down. So this is now interestingly, this is actually, so the ideal versus reality, there is always a contradiction. So this contradiction, let us face what is happening in the context of pandemic treaty or pandemic agreement. But again, I'm saying it's pandemic agreement at the moment. That's my understanding, and it is actually going to be an agreement. So pandemic agreement is a framework of economic constitutionalism, like any other treaties. But public health and integral constitutionalism, what we just talked about. So public health and integral constitutionalism, these are more like going hand in hand. There is not much contradiction. Now, what is the opportunity before World Health Organization, as well as for any member states, for us, the general people, uh, to embrace the value of integral constitutionalism? But again, it's an ideal position. It's an ideal framework. Uh, so the question is that how any agreement or how any international pact could be further developed based on the principle of this integral constitutionalism to foster a public health, like in our context, today's conversation, based on the today's conversation, to foster public health for sustainability and well-being paradigm, which I perhaps skipped. Actually, this paradigm is mentioned about this integral constitutionalism. So development paradigm to the sustainability and well-being paradigm. So how we can uh, uh, transit, if I would need, I mean, if I need to say that. So now I come to the second part, or sorry, I mean, this is already second part. So the this is actually all about the pandemic agreement. The pandemic agreement. So if you go to the pandemic agreement WHO site, so there is now it's a third draft. Fourth, the third draft is also coming very soon. So it's how it happens. It's a negotiation of between the member states, and there is international intergovernmental negotiating bodies, that's called INB. And this so they have been debating, deliberating, discussing on this for the past 2 years. Now, more or less, there are, so as I gave the premise that this is the present structure. Now, what happened in the during the COVID-19? So see, COVID-19 was not the first pandemic in this, even if I may say, in this century. Before that also there were other pandemics in recent period. We don't need to go back to 1920. So SARS, there was MERS, there was. So COVID-19, it escalated and affected across people across the globe. Or rather, if I need to say, probably it was unlike earlier pandemics of this century, COVID-19 disproportionately affected the people in developed countries. So that became more kind of a news, I mean, globally. I think that was also one of the political economy reason, that it unlike other I mean, it disproportionately affected the rich also, and not only the poor. So so anyway, so I mean, and followed by that, what we saw, that there was discrepancy in terms of accessing to medical countermeasures, meaning not only vaccine, rather it's first it started with this entire vaccine nationalism phenomena, meaning that we first need to secure our own population. So we need say our country to be safe at the cost of others and all. So vaccine hoarding. Before that, actually, it started with PPE, that protective gears. So PPE and other diagnostic instruments, as well as vaccine. So enter this medical countermeasures product was not equally distributed or available. And there was also the COVID-19 pandemic. It I mean, it revealed, it exposed the lacunas in the current form of functioning of health system, rather I would say health services. Meaning, what happened, especially in the developing and the least developed countries, still primary health, meaning that the health infrastructure what we have in our municipalities, in our villages, they are still relatively well functioned. But in the developed economies, say like in Europe, the primary health is completely doctor centric or treatment centric, meaning that, say, I believe that most of the participants here from South Asia. So the kind of grassroots level health workers we have for vaccination, for other public health services, and that's for outreach services, these are almost non-existent. So 21 onwards, they actually, it was realized even in the Europe. So Belgium came up with a plan. France actually changed its government planning in respect to health. Spain. So the grassroots level health workers also, even in fact, the trainings are going on for grassroots level health workers. So the countries across the world, they are trying to give more concentration or attention, relatively more concentration on the primary healthcare structure. Otherwise, what we tend to give, even say, even till date in India, say, if you see that mostly our health budget is attending the need of the tertiary. Tertiary means the hospital centric care. Say, in popular terms, is Ayushman Bharat. So there are debates continuously going on that after Ayushman Bharat, that hospital centric publicly financed health insurance, which government is taking the responsibility to finance the hospital expenditure for certain category of population, which is not minuscule in terms of number. That actually consumes a lot of resources or budget allocations from the typical primary healthcare, like, or even some the NRHM, National Rural Health Mission, or now it's called NHM, National Health Missions. So one point of just to make it more further clear, see what happens, that all these hospital centric or insurance based, or insurance means publicly purchased, I mean, say, not the risk transfer. What happening that from the community level development infrastructure, now health budget is giving relatively more priority to individual centric healthcare need. So these are the big debates right now going on within the health policy sphere, that how to address this. Now, pandemic treaty at the beginning, it was actually, it took into account all these ideas, all these debates, conversations, and then it started its negotiation process. So mostly there are 6 different branches in this agreement, we can say. So one is that strengthening and sorry, strengthening and supporting health systems. So meaning what is happening, that as I said just before this, like how our primary healthcare was compromised, we were more focusing on the hospital centric super specialty, multi specialty hospitals, and this. So how to strengthen the overall health systems, especially at the primary level as well as the secondary level. Secondary means the district hospital, rural hospitals in this. So how to make it, I mean, re-emphasize, so rebuild the health system. So that was the terminology, and that is still the terminology, rebuilding the health systems. So that's the one component, I would say. Second is that governance, coordination, and implementation. So this is at the global level. See, again, this 6 components actually. Some components are mostly addressing at the national level, and some components are addressing the concerns of the international agendas. So as you can understand, the strengthening and supporting health systems, this is mostly about the national level agenda, that how every country needs to adhere to the basic structure of health systems, where it is not only so here actually now I come let me go component wise. So in the first component, so in our typical understanding of public health, we understand, okay, so this particular strengthening and supporting health system means it is primary health care, then what we call PHC. Now there is a accepted terminology, what we call universal health coverage or care. So PHC and USC. Now in this component, that agreement has brought in another one that is called One Health. So One Health is the health of human, health of animal, as well as health of environment, and even now another inclusion, health of plant. So, or I would say rather health of ecosystems. So this is One Health. Now in this particular component, what we are seeing that mostly it is actually in the name of strengthening and supporting health systems. This components is addressing how to strengthen the public health surveillance of the countries, and that is mostly coming up a push from the developed economy, especially European Union. EU is a party. It's an economic integration of many countries. So apart from the individual countries, EU also is a party, member states in the WHO's governance. So mostly it is coming because the developed economies, they are actually having their concern is that this international transfer of risk. What is that? Uh, say uh, consider EU's food, entire food consumption. Say 65 to 70% of EU's food consumption is based on its import capacity, mostly from Latin America as well as from Asia. Now, all these, say, food items, so how to maintain the safety and hygiene of these items? AMR, antimicrobial resistance, is a big problem. So whether any particular poultry products or any meat products, these are actually antimicrobial free or not, how to govern that, how to create a governance that may not be in our own territory, in our own sovereign territory, but in other sovereignty. So that's why there's a need of international standard. Now this international standard can be implemented using One Health approach. I hope I'm clear in this particular stance, that why One Health is bought into under this composition of strengthening and supporting health systems. Now, surveillance is a very essential character of public health historically, and surveillance is necessary also. The problem here is that many countries, especially representing the interest of the global south or the underdeveloped, least developed and developing countries, they believe that One Health is not necessarily be a public health surveillance tool or approach. Rather, it would be an exploitation in the future for claiming geographical GI products. What is the understanding behind this? So all these GI markers in today's world, say in India, we have this basmati rice, so tulsi. So these are actually GI products, and they are, and GI products are very much economically revenue generating resources or assets for any country. Now, the through One Health, it is again these are very vague areas, but there are certain texts which are actually talking about that that One Health will use digital sequencing digital transfer of genetic sequencing. So what happens, so if we come across any new pathogen, so then that has to be genetically sequenced, and that sequencing should be shared. So these are the ideal practice, but it does never happens in reality. So far it didn't happen. Always there are diplomatic channels, there are economic interest, there are persuasion, negotiations, and then genetic sequencing are usually made available to other parties, so called. So the assumption or the uh, hesitation is that, the fear is that One Health will be used as a security tool to gather all those sequences, genetic sequences, and later on it can hamper their economic prosperity. Again, so you may not find it much into the text. You may not even find it in a lot of academic discussions, I mean paper and those commentary and perspective pieces, but these are the reality in Geneva's diplomatic circle. I mean, that is the most apprehensive areas which the parties collectively need to address. So second composition is that governance, coordination, and implementation. So again, so here is there is a global structure is proposed, that how WHO can coordinate WHO. So in the current structure, what is the problem is that WHO's autonomy as an independent UN or multilateral institution is reduced heavily. There is a funding politics, meaning that WHO now needs to depend more on voluntary funding, which that means that it is guided by the funders' agenda of programs. So there is a typical budget funding and voluntary funding. Budget funding means that it's a contribution. It's calculated based on the GDP of the each countries, and that contribution goes to the WHO's budget funding, where WHO has full autonomy, meaning WHO can create, can allocate its program budget in according to its own understanding of scientific rationality and policy choices and budgets. But in the voluntary funding, actually it is not possible. Say some countries saying that okay, I will give you X amount under the voluntary contribution. Now what is happening, that this country is dictating WHO to focus on particularly, say okay, say how you assist the countries, or you more give more focus that how countries can adopt publicly financed health insurance schemes. And these are various linkages. So why Germany, or why say the UK will give fund, or even there are philanthrocapitalists, the term is used. So meaning that the big transnational corporations, say Bill Gates, so it has its own philanthropic arm that's called BMJF, Bill and Melinda Gates Foundation. So BMJF, in fact, there are many questions on BMJF's activities, that how it is channelizing its own agendas, pushing its own agenda using various multilateral institutions like WHO, not only WHO, FAO, the UN agency responsible for the food. So how it is using those agencies, channelizing its own funding programs. So say even the UK, if it is asking WHO or any institution that you go for or make certain policies, it's not the dictating policy, but it is giving an overall agenda, that this I think that we should explore. Say the countries say that we explore that how the possibility of publicly financed health insurance is possible, say in Vietnam. What is happening, that the moment this model of insurance based healthcare coming, there are certain growth of private sector, and those private sector actually, then there is a demand for the human resource. There's a demand for various kind of high intensive medical technologies. So these are also again linked to various kind of foreign funding. I would not say, I mean, that foreign funding means not funding coming from literally foreign, but in the given the structure of our market financing, the equity financing, share market. So various form modalities of financings are available, where the financing, the finance market is not necessarily to be restricted in a country. It is global financing market, and that's how the monopolization of financing market happening. And that's how even say the hospital setup, if you say, for example, if you see the corporate hospitals, say Apollo, Vedanta, and they are how they are financed to expand their infrastructure. So these are mostly coming from various form of funding instrument and market-based funding instruments. And that's how, see, our local activity or our national policies are linked with the global process of financing. So the movement, similarly, what about the fear about this One Health instrument is that our say countries own GI products or GI markers, because GI is very important marker in the UN structure of claiming indigenousness of any natural resources. So how it is linked with the global finance capital, if I would say, a global finance market. So these are the processes, and that's why these agreements or pacts are becoming very, very important for especially for concerned citizens of every countries. So governance, coordination, and implementation, this is another composition where mostly it is talk actually about that creating some format at the international level. But interestingly, these are not rule based. These are suggestive platform, voluntary based. So the what happened, that means that countries need not say at the time of in the time of crisis, say any pandemic sense in the future, WHO won't have its full capacity to dictate countries, no, you cannot hoard vaccines, or you need to give it, say in epidemiological sense, we say that what are the epidemiological distribution of diseases, and accordingly we need to. So this is then okay.
So just about 10 minutes, is that all
Yeah,
right?
I just checked. Yeah,
Okay. Okay.
yeah.
All right.
So I intentionally emphasized on One Health because One Health is now is a featured point in every article. Article means actually the pandemic agreement. They say it in articles. The articles of the treaty or the negotiation draft. So so in this way, everything is getting very much contested. Another is that the global strategy for access to what? Research and development, production, and technology transfer. So global access strategy in public health sense, it means that access to mostly the medical countermeasures, which are essential during the time of any emergency. As I said, vaccines, medicines, PPE, diagnostic tools, and all. But see, it's a pact of countries internationally. So it is not only limited to products. Rather, if we need to go for a long term, because it is supposed to be a long term, paving a long term path for overall restructuring. It's called pandemic preparedness, PPR, pandemic preparedness, prevention, and response activity. So so that's why how the research and development is being addressed also, the capacity of research and development. Unfortunately, so far there is no guarantee anything like the earlier component, governance and coordination and implementation. So this one also, it is stated that countries shall take voluntary measures, should be empathetic. I mean, there is again no rule based that you have to share your resources or you cannot hoard, or there has to be certain amount of financing from the global north or from particular countries to particular countries. So that, so meaning that again this composition is not going to change anything, bring in any change. Rather it is actually a format of stabilization, meaning whatever existed earlier, let's be continue. So this is a problem. That is why the negotiation is not advancing even an inch. So we lost 2 years. Now I think it will be approved, but not the way as we desired or hope for. Then very big agenda of contestation between the so-called global south and global north is actually, as I said, explained One Health and PABS. What is PABS? Pathogen Access Benefit Sharing. As I was briefly mentioning while illustrating the One Health idea, that pathogen access benefit sharing is a mechanism. It is taken from another, the concept is taken from another UN convention on Convention of Biodiversity Treaty, CBT. So meaning that any new pathogen or pathogen of concerns, pathogen of interest, these are just to degrees of veracity in that way. So if any country come across, then it has to share its genetic sequencing with the WHO accredited or a laboratory or data bank hosted by the WHO. Now the problem is something different. The problem is that here the mostly those who are opposing this, they are saying that how you will ensure that. Now so pathogen access benefit, meaning say there is a new pathogen which is a kind of a pathogen of interest or pathogen of concern, and India got it. The genetic sequencing also India let's shares with the WHO, so-called supposed WHO international pool of pathogens bank, data bank. Now it is not clear what will be the benefit, since India is going to share this with the rest of the world. The concerns for the countries, especially least developed countries, especially from African group and the Southeast Asia, that earlier it happened, they shared the pathogens sequencing, but in return they didn't get required amount of vaccine in. Or earlier there are many earlier examples actually during the SARS pandemic and all. So then what is, how you can ensure it that we will share it, but later on what happens? So see, again there is no commitment, and the text is saying that respective party will be given due consideration and benefit. So these are the vagueness, abstract languages, as well as not concrete measures are proposed. So that's why they remain an items or articles of dispute. Last two components is sustainable financing. Very briefly, sustainable financing, how it is proposed, that there is already a called pandemic funding. Pandemic funding meaning that it is hosted by World Bank. There are certain global north countries which have already donated or in the process of donation, making donations, and certain voluntary philanthropic organization like the Gates Foundations. They would provide some fund, and then countries can access to that fund in order to strengthen their structure. Again, what happens, see, I mean, those who work on this aid and development, they know all this financing, this come with certain conditionalities. Now say, even say Bangladesh wants to be a part of the agreement, and this agreement Bangladesh may not much keen. So this is a broader, as I said, it's a suggestive guidelines framework. It's not they are not compelled. There are certain compulsions, but that's not much relevant anyway. So there are not compulsions, but Bangladesh has to make some progress on its strengthening of the health system. And the moment it will go, that is the apprehension. Again, I have been working on this, particularly international financing. So my understanding is that what would happen, or what may happen, that Bangladesh then needs to, any country then needs to ask for funding, and that funding will come, but there will be some measures that, I mean, the conditional funding. So knowing, or inadvertently, one has to comply with the so-called securitization of One Health. Or there are this sustainable financing. This is a big ask, because the countries from the poor rung of the development paradigm, they are asking that you are asking us to go create this such kind of mammoth public health surveillance architecture. There is digital health and all, I mean, a lot. Then how can we go that? So there is a respite in the form of respite, actually, that no, such financing is there, but the problem is not in that way. It will be happening in this. And third is that the equity, solidarity, and trust. If you see the any negotiating draft, any version, good number of valued words like sovereignty, respect, and all are said, but there is no focus on self-reliance. So there is a focus of there is no focus of only equitable access, maybe, but not with equitable planning, meaning that how we cannot let another pandemic to happen. So the question is that the erosion of solidarity, the erosion recently, two particular member states, they said that we don't know what is solidarity. And it was a big news, especially in Europe, that X and Y countries said that during the negotiation. Anyway, it was always an internal discussion. It is always an internal discussion. So we are not party to such, but it was leaked and all this. So what is solidarity? So solidarity, trust, these are the very basic requisitions for any such international compact, or for any compact. So these are not there. And in this way, what is it is really a very, very demeaning as well as demotivating, that what pandemic agreement was thought of and how it is coming in that way. So what I would sum up, if I'm allowed to say that it is not going to change anything, ups and downs. Rather, it is creating an architecture to stabilize the existing system. So this is the last point what I try to make. What I've been trying to say. Overall, if you consider all these 6 broad compositions, in terms of at the country level, we are not getting, in terms of equity, it's getting down. Rather, security, it's going up. So it is more public health terms. In public health in public health modes, it is more about that securitization of infrastructure to make them more robust, more competent. But in terms of building long-term plan, giving space to the for access and requirements, nothing. So that will remain a dispute. And as on date, it is very difficult whether it is going to be even signed or not. But I think it is going to be signed, but it is not going to be much effective. And it will take probably another 1 to 2 years to fully functional in the international sphere. Thank you all.
Thank you very much, Amitabh. I think firstly,
Sorry, I
because
took 5 minutes extra.
but that's all right. I think thanks are due just because, like, it becomes, it is becoming so puzzling to understand that what it is basically and how it relates to each of these countries. It's not easy to sort of get through this coded. I think thank you for decoding that, first of all. And I guess there are some questions. There is only one question possibly is talking about, well, so do we expect then that country specific practices, like some might be very harmful practices, will be then now under radar, and can it then kind of safeguard us from this kind of bad practices, malpractices? I think another question coming from Anupam Pal. I don't know whether you want to just grab the mic and speak it out. Anupam.
Let us take one more question, then probably I think it will be.
Okay.
Yes.
Yeah, please.
So
Yeah.
can I say something? I am Anupam, calling from West Bengal. Can I say something? I'm an
Yes, please.
agriculturist. On
Please,
a point
please.
of One Health, they are mentioning that the food should be pure, food should be secured, and they talk about antimicrobial or other things. First of all, they polluted the food initially with genetically modified foods, chemically pesticides, fertilizers, heavy metals, everything. They are polluted. Now they are saying for safe food, it is very difficult. So they must say something that we must stop using chemical fertilizers, genetically modified foods, pesticides, and hybrid seeds, etc. So we have enough food, we can produce enough food with organic and natural farming. This is my first point. Secondly, that now they are saying that they want to do, the international health approach, coordinated approach. There are some words. The words are not very tricky. Words are not clear. You have definitely mentioned that they some fishy, not clear. So they have changed the definition of pandemic during this COVID affair. And once you release the Pandora's box from the boxes, you cannot put them inside the box again. So they are talking about the genetic diseases. Why they are not stopping these bogus researchers in biotechnological laboratories? These are the sources. That sources should be stopped. We don't need such research. We don't need that research. We have enough research we can do without doing these things. So we are researching on these, these dangerous things that this Chinese laboratory and other laboratories, So that sort of research and cloning experiment should be stopped. If they stop all these things, so we should not raise these issues of this One Health approach. This is simply I want to say. So thank you very much.
Can I
Thank you
come
very
in?
much. Amitabh, you want to respond to any of these two, or
Yeah,
you
sure.
want-
No,
Yeah.
sure. Thereafter, Bijayadi, I think she has some question, and Paulumi Mukherjee also. Okay, so let me come to this point actually. See, Umapati Babu, and the previous question also. In public health, we have a different understanding of One Health. One Health is an approach for prevention, but One Health is interpreted or assumed or under such and such apprehension to be used as an approach for security. Am I clear? So One Health as a prevention is an very, very interesting. I just shared a small, it's a short documentary we made on the Sundarbans, not typically on One Health, but tried to see how Sundarbans ecosystem is under danger. So, and thereafter, if one actually has more interest can go to that UN Research Institute for Social Development. We have a paper on there, that One Health and Eco-Social Constitutionalism, Eco-Social Contract, sorry, in the Sundarbans. So that also might give you some understanding that how public health scholars or public health people, they are conceptualizing One Health. Rather, One Health is just becoming a means to uh, agendize the very security option for that. So this is a problem. And I would not say that we don't need funding or more research infrastructure at the laboratory level. I think that we really need that. But the problem is that uh, what happens that if you see the One Health committee in India, mostly these committee members are from Department of Biotechnology, Department of Agriculture. Probably, I think I didn't see a single one from public health. I know a very, I know, I'm not taking name. I mean, a senior professor from JNU, he has been working on One Health and really very effective contribution in the field. So I think it's, so uh, he was pointing it out that not a single public health person is now a member of the Indian One Health community, One Health committee. I mean, so you understand that you are addressing a public health concerns and there is no public health person. So that is a problem, is that how we are conceptualizing it. Again, I say that it's a trade-off between public health and trade and commerce. So this treaty, this pact, or this agreement is primarily primarily an agreement to protect the interest of trade and commerce, or to protect people from the adverse effect of trade and commerce. If I need to make it in a non-public health language, I repeat, this compact or this agreement is primarily to protect the interest, to protect people from the influence of trade and commerce or adversity of trade and commerce. So that is why it is still long way to go to achieve the public health means. And again, WHO should not be blamed here. WHO's mechanism is very plural and intergovernmental. In that way, WHO is not guiding anything. Rather, WHO is advised by several member states to make this. So I can talk about the soil health, as you said, as you're an agriculturalist. I can talk about the animal health, the zoonotic, the spill back and the spill over. So how these things are happening. The problem is that in our conceptualization, but since it's a general conversation, so I maintain this. In our general conversation, it's unfortunately it is now a security tool and not a prevention approach. Thanks.
Yeah, thank you, Amitabh. I think there will be it's very difficult. It's already hard and difficult to sort of attain an agreed conclusion. I'm very sure about that. We take some more questions, maybe Polomi. Would you like to go first?
Thank you. Good evening, all. I'm Polomi Mukherjee from Janashastha Morcha, PAPH. We are a mass organization working on public health. Our organization was formed during the COVID years from deep concerns regarding public health. I would first like to thank Dr. Shorkar for stressing on the fact about global constitutionalism. The role of WTO, World Bank, and UN, you have explained very nicely. Thank you, sir. But I have a question. Like these agreements, the GATT agreement, WTO agreements, these were signed in our country, in India, in the early 90s. 20 years down the line, in 2010, our country made headlines about farmer suicide. And that continued for years. It was also, the farmer suicides were related to a lot of planning and also to genetically modified seed, etc., which Dr. Anupam Pal was also talking about. During the COVID years also, there have been a number of concerns. Like actually, when we work at the grassroots level, we see a lot of questions being raised from the public. Like Bill and Melinda Gates Foundation was accused in our country in 2012, 2013 of unethically performing HPV vaccine trials. And then in a parliamentary committee report, they were actually thrown out of the country. They came back in COVID years with the bag of vaccines. And now with the recent developments, like in India, the fact about electoral bonds, which have surfaced before the national elections, we can see that Serum Institute gave the ruling party crores of money, and the vaccines got their their emergency authorization license before the trials were complete. The trials were not completed. So all this raises a lot of questions regarding this pandemic agreement, where we are actually agreeing to be ready or prepared for a pandemic at all times. So in our health budget, are we going to lose the focus on more important issues like malnutrition? Our country has struck the headlines regarding its poor performance in global hunger index, malnutrition, child wasting, and all this. You know, whether all that is going to take a backseat, because the pandemic agreement also requires mandatory budget allocation for pandemic preparedness. So this is a serious question. Like, I just like to end with one example. Right now in our country, there's a discussion going on whether we should start BCG vaccination again, or tuberculosis vaccination should be given to the masses again. Now, India, the population of India, almost 100% vaccination against tuberculosis has already been achieved many, many years ago. Still, tuberculosis is in the discussion. One of the reasons is malnutrition again. Whether the pathogen is more important and we should tackle the pathogen in the form of vaccines, or whether malnutrition is more important here. And lastly, I would like to end about the One Health approach. The European Union is pressing the governments of other countries to adopt laws, and probably in these international agreements also, about live animal markets. So, like, as a fish-loving Bengali, I would say, you know, we depend on our nutrition for the local we depend on the local biodiversity. So cheap nutrition, which is available around us, whether that needs to be controlled by a transnational organization who doesn't have any institutional checks under here. That's actually raises a lot of concerns. And lastly, about GM seeds also, under the One Health approach, genetically modified seeds also raises a lot of concern. Farmers associations have been against them since a very, very long time. Thank you.
For me, I think we don't have much time. So do you want to collect other questions and then respond?
Yeah. Vijayadi, I think, has a question.
Okay. So one more
Vijay Roy.
question. And please be a little brief if you can.
Yeah, sure. I'm not.
There is
there's some-
echo actually. I don't know from whose
Yeah,
end.
there's a
Sorry,
lot of-
Vijay. Yeah. If please mute all of you except who are speaking. Actually, there is some echo. I don't know. Yeah, Vijayadi, please.
Yeah, thank you, Amitav, for laying out this framework. I think a lot of interesting questions have already come in. I'm more interested in knowing in terms of, like in your response when you were sharing, there were a lot of in terms of what is global South thinking. But I was also thinking in terms of what are the indigenous communities in, say, for the place of Canada or US, where there have been a lot of impact of COVID on them, and even in Australia and many other parts, what have been their response to this pandemic agreement? Because when we look at reproductive, particularly violence, there's a lot of emerging literature from those contexts, and there's a lot to learn from India from those spaces. So I would be more interested in understanding what have been their response to this kind of pandemic agreement being engaged with, and also in terms of, there's a lot of discussion which is around the allopathic system of medicine, but in terms of other systems of medicine, uh, uh, what has been and these agreements engaging with, and how, because there is I feel there's a lot of marginalization is also happening at the same time. Yeah.
Thank you, Paulomi. Thank you, Vijayadi. Very important interventions, and I really congratulate to both of you for posing rich perspectives with critical understanding or insights. So first, to address Paulomi's question in brief, that see, what is the modus operandi, or what is the objective of a pandemic, of an international agreement? The objective, in response to your question, that understand influence of transnational actors, philanthrocapitalists, their objectives, their agendas, and then come to the typical, what you say about bunyadi, the fundamental issues of public health. So uh, the point is that the objective should be to make government enable, to fight or resist the corporate interest in order to protect the people, using public health as a means. So to make the governments enable to resist the corporate as well as market interest in order to protect people using public health as a means. Now, as you have rightly pointed out, there are not only animal markets, there are even biodiversity markets are also there. So and these are all bigger structure of financialization. I'm not getting into that, but my point is that it's a valid concern, and none of the articles of the treaty or the agreement is so far saying that this will make government empowered to fight against the corporate. This is a point. And unfortunately, I mean, we made this intervention very recently, but it is not much in the discourse, because this is a bit of I'm probably digressing the discussion, because mostly the pandemic treaty is a subject of academic interest for the academics in global north, because in the global south we need to deal with a lot of other issues. So that's why, except some civil society interventions, pandemic treaty is broadly not much of interest for the global south. So while we actually came up with this point, that does it make government empowered enough? So this is a problem I address. So I think this is very clear. So while we articulate with our various forms of public agitation, say Janashastro Morcha, please think of, and even the negotiation activities with politicians, ministers, and leaders. I hope so there are still some spaces to make them sensitize, that asks them that to send representatives in Geneva, uh, I mean, they ask, sometime ask, or anyway, but let's not, I'm getting into personal things. But my point is that they should understand that where does government needs to stand. And in the global south also, it's not a very homogeneous concept right now. So here, even say Brazil, they are saying that no, we need big pharmas. We need big pharmaceutical companies. So it is not like that only all the countries are very much on same platform in the so-called global south. There are various differences. Coming back to the Bijayaji's question is very interesting. I have never thought of in that way. The no, regarding the knowledge system, you are saying that it is, again, it is there, but I think it is there in a very ritualistic manner. Like, means we need to mention that people is there, Ayurveda is there, or indigenous, integration of different knowledge system is there in that way, not in a perfunctory manner. What I mean by saying it perfunctory, meaning that how it will actually make it actualize, make it happen using the broader public health understanding. There is nothing. So these are very ritualistic. Now the question, what you say, that the pressures coming from various indigenous communities, be it in the US, in Canada, in Europe also, Roma is the largest indigenous community. And of course, in South Asia, we have a lot of representation only, not only this thing. So uh, I come back to the question of, again, One Health. In the first two drafts of the treaty, it was not even mentioned that how the agreement or the treaty should address the primordial factors. You understand, Vijayadi, what I mean primordial. So primordial means actually that the basic determinants of health. In this sense, say forest. In this sense, the agricultural land. So what is the assumption is that especially the the evolutionary biologists, they are saying that the conversion of forest into the agricultural land, the farmland, what I think Umapati Babu mentioned this in a bit different way. So these are actually posing great risk to public health, because that's a situation when wild or uh, uh, animals are wild extinct in that way, they come in contact with people. So chance of pathogen exchange, spill over, and that's a primordial determinant in this case. So the first two drafts even didn't mention of that. So actually one intervention came up in a form of perspective piece, that One Health is not even addressing primordial determinants of health, and you are talking about One Health. So what does it mean? Then third draft, it somehow said that, okay, all these assets need to be respected. Assets mean the natural assets. So it is very clear, I hope, from this particular understanding, that how it is looking at the concerns of the indigenous community, how it is respecting the concerns of indigenous community. And it is and no countries, including South Asian countries or the countries which are more respectful, respectfully in terms of in terms with the indigenous community, are not talking about that. Because see, again, I'm saying that this is particularly actually happening to safeguard the interest of trade and commerce, so that it should not adversely affect people.
Yeah.
And that is why actually we need our internal deliberation at the country level to make our government more informed.
Yes.
I don't know whether I don't think, I am not following India, especially in this case, for a quite for some time. So I don't know that whether in India there was any committee, there was any governance level meeting happened so far on the pandemic agreement, that what should be India's position, what should be, how should we look at it. Rather, after this agreement will happen, and after 4 or 5 years, when all its all these tributaries or sub tributaries will become tributaries and make an ocean, then we will come to know what is happening to us, and then we would start agitating.
Okay, thank you, Amitavo. I think Nita wants to say something. And Nita, please carry on. And we have only 2 minutes, so please
আপনি
keep the
বাংলায়
time.
বা
Yeah.
হিন্দিতে বলতে পারেন না, উনি বোধহয় বলছিলেন বাংলায় বা হিন্দিতে, আপনি
হ্যাঁ।
বলতে পারেন।
অ্যাকচুয়ালি সরি, শুনতে পাচ্ছেন সবাই?
হ্যাঁ, পাচ্ছি, আমি পাচ্ছি।
আচ্ছা, সরি, আমার নাম নিতা ধর। আমি প্রিজমের একজন ভলেন্টিয়ার, প্রিজম ইন্ডিয়ার। তো আমি এই আলোচনাটা খুব ভাইটালি আলোচনা, আপনাকে ধন্যবাদ জানাচ্ছি এই ধরনের আলোচনা একটা শুরু হয়েছে বলে। প্যান্ডামিক যে কথাটা বলছেন, প্যান্ডামিকের সময় যেটা নাকি ভাবতে হবে যে এই ভ্যাকসিন দিয়ে কত লোকের সুবিধা হয়েছে, কত লোকের অসুবিধা হয়েছে। এবং আপনারা বলছেন যে আপনাদের বিদেশে যেরকম হয় সেরকম ইন্ডিয়াতে হয় না। তো এই পরিপ্রেক্ষিতে আমি বলছি, আজকের দিনে দাঁড়িয়ে যে এই প্যান্ডামিক সিচুয়েশনে যারা সো কল একদম, তারা কিন্তু আজকের দিনে দাঁড়িয়ে শারীরিক, মানসিক এবং মেন্টালি, শারীরিক মানসিক মানে মানসিক বলতে মেন্টালি হয়, এবং সবকিছুতেই তারা একটা যেন কেন একটা অন্যরকম পর্যায়ে পড়ে গেছে। হ্যাঁ, তো এই ভাবনা থেকে যে কতটা কি করা উচিত সেটা তারা নিজেরাও বুঝতে পারছে না। এবং আমরা দেখেছি যে মানুষ ভুলে যাওয়ার প্রবণতা অনেক বেড়ে গেছে, এবং আমার নিজের ক্ষেত্রেও তাই। তো সেক্ষেত্রে কতটা প্রযোজ্য কতটা প্রযোজ্য না জানি না, আমিও সবকিছুই নিয়েছি। সেক্ষেত্রে আপনাদের দেশে বা আমাদের দেশে কতটা কি সাকসেসফুল আমরা কিন্তু জানি না, কিন্তু এটা কিন্তু খুব ভাইটাল একটা বিষয়, যেটাকে নাকি আমি বারবার বলছি, এটা বাংলায় অথবা হিন্দিতে হলে আম জনতার কাছে পৌঁছবে, আম জনতা সজাগ হবে। আর আপনারা জানেন, বিশেষ করে নর্থ বেঙ্গল, আলিপুরদুয়ার অঞ্চলে মেডিকেল সিস্টেম কিন্তু খুব স্বতঃস্ফূর্ত হবে না। এখানে যদি কারো কিছু হয় কলকাতা নয় বাইরে কোথাও যেতে হয়। সেই জন্য দেখা যাচ্ছে যারা সুস্থ তারাও কিন্তু এখন অসুস্থ হচ্ছে, এবং ইয়াং জেনারেশনের একটা অ্যাগ্রেসিভ মুড চলে আসছে যারা ভ্যাকসিনেশন করেছে। আর সব থেকে বড় কথা আমি বলবো, তাদেরকে কিছু বললেই তারা নিজেদেরকে নিজেরা অন্য মাত্রায় নিয়ে যাচ্ছে, হয় তারা সুইসাইড করছে, না হলে কোথাও চলে যাচ্ছে, এরকম একটা সিচুয়েশন হয়েছে। সেই জন্য আমি বলছি যে এই ডিসকাশন গুলো খুব গুরুত্বপূর্ণ। যদি আপনারা বাংলায় অথবা হিন্দিতে করেন তাহলে আমরা আরো মানুষের কাছে ছড়াতে পারি।
Thank you, Nita.
Nita.
Thank you very much. I think for the benefit of our attendees who can't understand Bengali, what she is saying is she is a local worker with Prism, our partner on these, and she is working in North Bengal area, and where she can see that there is a lot of adverse impacts of vaccines on the population. One of those being like increased sense of forgetfulness and other things. It's not been medically established as of now, but I think that has been the case with her observation that she can see. Now, what she's saying is possibly these kind of
হ্যালো দিদি,
should be.
দিদি, আর একটা কথা বলতে চাই, এই যে কোভিশিল্ডের ব্যাপারটা মিডিয়াতে ফাঁস হয়েছে, যে কোভিশিল্ড নিলে এরকম সিমটম হচ্ছে, এরকম সিমটম হচ্ছে, এরকম সিমটম হচ্ছে। আপনি জানেন না, এখানে চা বলয়ের মধ্যে আমরা থাকি, এবং এই যে এগুলো ট্রমা হিসাবে কাজ করে, যে আমি কোভিশিল্ড নিয়েছি, এটা নিয়েছি, ওটা নিয়েছি, এটা নেইনি, এগুলোও কিন্তু একটা ট্রমা হিসাবে কাজ করছে। এমা, তাহলে কি আমার তার জন্য হয়েছে? এগুলোতেও আমাদের কিন্তু ইনভলভমেন্ট আছে, কারণ আমরা দেখি এগুলোকে সান্ত্বনা দিয়ে রাখা হচ্ছে। তো এই কোভিশিল্ড আর কোভ্যাক্সিনের মধ্যে যে ফারাকটা মিডিয়া বলুন, গভর্নমেন্ট বলুন, এটা করে দিয়েছে, এটা করে দিয়েছে, এটা এটা কিন্তু মানে আমি জানি না কোথা থেকে কি হয়েছে। আর দ্বিতীয় কথা, আর একটা গভর্নমেন্ট যেটা করেছে, তোমাকে ভ্যাকসিনেশন নিয়ে তোমাকে যদি এই দেশ থেকে ওই দেশে যেতে হবে, তোমাকে ভ্যাকসিনেশন কার্ড দেখাতে হবে।
Yeah. Okay, Nita, sorry, actually, I need to cut you off because this is only like, we have already passed our time. So
Okay.
what I'll do is I'll hand over to Amitavo. Amitavo, feel free to speak in English and then we can conclude. And then we can come back to Nita later on. Well, she's talking about vaccine politics in an internal kind of very like, micro environment of maybe a tea garden and all that. So that's very important, but it's a separate topic for discussion. Okay, Amitavo.
আমি জাস্ট একটু ছোট্ট করে ব্যাপারটা আমি জাস্ট 2 মিনিট 1 মিনিট একটু বাংলায় বলছি, উনি বারবার করে বলছেন বলে। সেটা হচ্ছে যে ভ্যাকসিন নিয়ে আমি তারপর আমি ইংলিশের ব্যাপারটা মানে করছি, আমার মতবাদটা বলছি। দিদি আপনাকে একটা কথা প্রথমত, আচ্ছা আমি উত্তর কলকাতার বাসিন্দা, আমার দেশ ভারতবর্ষ। তো আমি আমি জাস্ট কর্মসূত্রে এখন আছি বলে, যাই হোক। তো সেটা হচ্ছে যে আমি ভ্যাকসিন নিয়ে যে ধারণাটা গড়ে উঠেছে, এটা আমাদের যারা স্বাস্থ্য ব্যবস্থা চালাচ্ছে তারা যেভাবে কমিউনিকেট করে, মানে প্রচার করে, সেখানকার সমস্যা। ভ্যাকসিন যারা নিয়েছেন আজ থেকে 2 বছর বা 1.5 বছর আগে, তাদের এই মুহূর্তে তাদের কোনো সমস্যা বৈজ্ঞানিকভাবে এখনো পর্যন্ত পাওয়া যায়নি। যে খবরটা বাজারে এসছে, বা আমি বাজারই বলবো ব্যাপারটা, বা যেটা চলছে, সেটা হচ্ছে যে যখন ভ্যাকসিন নেওয়া হয়েছে তার কিছু দিনের মধ্যে, রাদার কয়েক ঘন্টার মধ্যে, যে পরিস্থিতিগুলো তৈরি হয়েছিল কিছু কিছু মানুষের ক্ষেত্রে, সেইগুলোর সঙ্গে কোনো ডাইরেক্ট রিলেশন আছে কিনা। তো সেই কারণের জন্যই এটা হয়েছে। আমি আর কিন্তু এখনো পর্যন্ত বৈজ্ঞানিকভাবে এর কোনো সত্যতা নেই যে আপনি যারা আমরা প্রত্যেকেই ভ্যাকসিন নিয়েছি তাদের কোনো ব্যবহারিক বা চারিত্রিক কোনো পার্থক্য এসছে কিনা, এর কোনো সত্যতা কিন্তু নেই। আমি এইটুকু আপনাকে বলতে পারি। So what I would say rather that she raised an important question within the vaccine hesitancy in the context of pandemic during the COVID-19 pandemic. And unfortunately, this is a very important topic actually. I would rather encourage and congratulate Nitadi for raising this question, because health communication is an important science communication and public management. So this is an important understanding. This is an avenue for public health. Unfortunately, again, the agreement is not much vocal about that, or not paving any or constructing any roadmap or route map that how will we actually address the vaccine hesitancy as well as the disinformation and misinformation campaign. Again, in a rhetoric manner, there are certain mentioned of those terminologies, as I said, misinformation, disinformation, but not in what way. Whereas the public health as a discipline, it has a very rich explanation that how to counter this. So this is not the platform to discuss about this, but I'm saying it's an important, the vaccine hesitancy and the disinformation campaign, but the treaty is, or the agreement is so far indifferent to this understanding. And that is how, see, there's a disconnect what Bijay is saying about that indigenous. So even it's indigenous or even the grassroots, the people, so people's concern and global mechanism. And this is actually a very eye-opening for me, this conversation, that how the disconnect remains. And Third World Network, exactly, Third World Network has been actually working on as a very active civil society, especially in the space of Global South, to talk about the pandemic treaty. And there are other civil society organizations also. And I hope that we will have something good in the future. Over to you, Papiari.
Yes, I think there are some questions, but these are more to me of comments rather than questions. But is there any last final questions you would feel that you want to pose it before Amitabh? Anyone? Okay. Yeah,
Okay,
Michael.
Michael.
Yeah.
I did put the comment in, but I've become aware of this democratizing work, a global movement during the pandemic, which was started by 3 female scholars with an article in Le Monde, which immediately became a manifesto signed by 6,000 scholars around the world, and has become a global movement. And I think it's key because the thing that we do most during our waking hours is work, and yet that is the place where there's virtually no democracy for the vast majority of people, and yet that's how we make the world what it is, through the work we do. And it's devoid of democracy. There's a huge scholarship about all this now, and online, and I met Isabel Ferreras, who was one of the main initiators of this, and she's professor of sociology at the University of Louvain, to ask her specifically her ideas in her 2 books that she's written, Firms as Political Entities and Democratizing the Corporation. Do those ideas apply to our NHS? Because I don't know whether you've heard, and I think you're from Leeds. Well, I live in Ackworth near Pontefract, and I went to Leeds Medical School in 1961. Okay, so I wanted to know, do those ideas apply to our NHS, which is crumbling? If you live in Leeds, so you must know. And she said, yes, absolutely, they apply to the NHS. And I think that it applies to all the things that have been said in today's wonderful session. And so I just wanted to flag up the democratizing work movement, in case you hadn't noticed it on my chat.
Yeah, I think there are, a couple of things. Thank you for that. And I think Nita's, again, going back to Nita's point, talking about even this misinformation and disinformation about, as Amitabh was mentioning about, public health communication is also creating troubled water for democratizing, not helping us to sort of unite for the right causes. So Amitabh, so is there any final word from your
No,
side?
I mean, yeah, sorry, Michael, actually, I had to just leave in between while you were talking for an urgent response. So the democratizing, if I understood the question or the concerns correctly, the democratization of society. So again, this is another thing. These are the points. So I am saying that, especially say to Paulomi, since she said that she is from Janashastra Morcha. I don't know. I am not seeing anybody else actually from the familiar faces of public health movements. Uh, anyway, so all the public health movements exist in various forms at the country level. I think there is a requirement of a public hearing. So let me come to this point now. Now let me come to my core of actually. I mean, we are constructing an international instrument which will have a constitutive right to govern over us. But we ourselves are not considered or consulted. Then how this process is going on? So the problem is that, and see, India, the election is going on. I was asking one of my friends actually to look at, she usually takes interest of the manifestos and the concerns of public health. So, one can actually go and look at it, that how we conceptualize understanding. And even the election season, there is no discussion on this agreement, nothing, except Third World Network, TWN, and PHM India, this People's Health Movement, some. So they are flagging some concerns, but it is again remain, say, as Paulumi is informed or Anupam Babu is informed, or say academics like Vijayadi. So that's what. But where is this overall understanding that such a big thing is going to happen? And this is, I mean, we need to go for public hearing. We need to understand this, and that how the democratization would have happen. Our elected representatives should be accountable to transparency, to fairness.
Well,
The
Amigba,
question is,
can I
yeah.
suggest that you make direct contact with Isabel Ferreras? Have a look, Google Isabel Ferreras and just see, because you know we're all in our own silos of organizations and things which are all brilliant and coming up. You know, it's been a magnificent overview that you've given today, but you know, I've got no influence, but I'm listening to people, and I think I can recognize that some really valuable connections that seem to me would be, you know, fruitful, don't happen, and so that's why I'm sticking my neck out and
No,
suggesting.
no, it's a very important, and I completely agree. The democratization practice is actually central to public health, and the democratization is not there. Rather, say off the cuff discussion, I need to, like, with so many MEPs, member of European parliaments, they are so it's interesting. So they say that, see, we need to be accountable. There are other bad things also about the European politics. It is not, I'm saying that portraying any other, say, Indian politics or other politics in bad light, but I am saying that this accountability and transparency mechanism should be there. Otherwise, that's what I mean, and that's why I'm saying that public health movements in various forms, we need to go for uh, for for this public hearing. We need to engage, say, local councillors, ministers, and using social media's innovative means. And I hope that India will remain to its core of this culture, even in the months to come. So this will actually help us to address this question. And there are certainly again, the moment the democratization would happen, automatically this trade and commerce over exploitation will be at least minimized, if not neutralized. Thank you.
Thank you, Amitabh. And I think if I'm not being undemocratic, it's already 16 minutes past. So should we go for a conclusion here? And then I know that this debate and discussions, it is not a time to sort of, you know, make it a stop here, but I think it will go on. And I think Poulomi has given her email ID as
Oh,
well
really?
as,
Okay,
yeah,
sorry, আমি
yeah,
জনস্বাস্থ্য
জনস্বাস্থ্য
ওয়েবসাইটটা
বার্তা
দেখেছি, ওনার আইডিটা
বার্তা
আমি পাইনি।
Email ID, both
yeah,
in replies.
in the in replies. So I can keep that copied
Oh,
for you just in
I
case
got
you
it,
want.
I got it.
You got
I
it,
got it.
yeah, okay,
Yeah.
all right. And then
Thank you.
we'll come back to the reference of Mike that he was already saying. I think it would be good to have these kind of, you know, connections, keeping
Yes,
it on.
yes.
Yeah,
Sure, sure.
and of course, like, you know, it doesn't end. Whatever time we invested over this 1.5 hours, it must not go west, actually. So let us keep united. Let us keep for the cause. And let
And
us see.
I think, we shall be also available, for Bengali discussions in Bengali also.
Exactly. Let us be multilingual. So with these hopes and solidarity, let us conclude here. And then we just thank everyone. Yeah, Hannah, over to you.
Thank you so much, Dr. Papia, for moderating the session, and also to our speaker, Amitabh sir. It was a very informative session, and thank you for all the participants for actively participating. So we have recorded this session and we'll be putting it up in the YouTube, so for others to have reference. And also, if you have any further questions, you can you can mail us and we'll help you get in connect with the speakers. Thank you so much, everyone. Thank you so much once again. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Much, everyone.
Thank you.
Thanks a lot. Yeah.